Welcome in to Greenville Grit. This is Greenville Residents in Touch with your hosts, Terry Williams and Michael Overton. This is the show that keeps you connected and in touch with the issues that affect what's happening in your community. Greenville Grit is sponsored by Greenville Toyota, the Overton Group, and Bill Clark Homes. Now, here are your hosts for Greenville Grit, Terry Williams and Michael Overton.
Welcome this evening to the Greenville Grit. I'm Terry Williams.
I'm Michael Overton, and...
Oh, I'm Dennis Mitchell.
Greenville Gritter. Dennis, thank you for coming on with us today, our faithful Greenville Gritter, Terry.
That's right.
It's
we
good to have him
appreciate
on.
it much. He's been keeping up with a lot of facts, and we'll share them with you in just a little bit.
Well, I want to make sure I publicly thank Thomas Taft for sitting in for me last week. It sounded like he did a great job with a great conversation with Congressman Jones. And
we did have
congratulations, I guess, are in order for Congressman Jones.
That's
and
right.
Representative Brian Brown, and I know Lee Teague made the cut on the top two. Who else?
Well, of course, Tom Tillis and the
Tom
U.S.
Tillis,
Senate,
absolutely.
That was one that you were obviously supporting. But I think it was very interesting. We all were up late last night wondering what was going on with
couldn't tell what was
Walter
going on.
Jones, Taylor Griffin race. And so I think it was
that
all
was a close one.
confirmed this morning that Walter did win that by 50% of the vote, a little over 50% of the vote.
It was close, though.
It was very close.
Very close to the very end.
It was. So, but we were glad to see, those results come in today favorably for him. And of course, Brian Brown had an awesome election.
Yeah.
71% of the vote.
That's strong. Very strong.
It was very
showing.
strong. So we're very excited to be sending Brian back, to Raleigh, hopefully after November is come and gone as well.
Well, we know we're not going to talk too much about politics.
Right.
We've got a lot of
to
city
cover.
stuff to talk about, which is why we have Dennis back on today. And
That's right.
before we do that, though, we are going to take a quick commercial break. Before we take the commercial break, we got to thank sponsors.
That's right.
So Greenville Toyota, thank you, Craig Ghost and the Greenville Toyota team for sponsoring us. We couldn't do it without you. If you need a new Toyota or Scion vehicle or a new used car or car repaired, call Craig Ghost. They're at Greenville Toyota on Memorial Drive and
the Overton Group. Thank you, Michael, for your continued support.
It's been a lot of fun. Really enjoyed being part of the show and have learned so much as being part of it. But Overton Group is real estate and property management professionals with an office in Greenville and in New Bern, serving all of Eastern North Carolina. Commercial real estate, residential real estate, property management, and business brokerage.
Yes.
Take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Greenville Grit. Here I am, Michael Overton, with my co-host Terry Williams and our Greenville Gritter, Dennis Mitchell. Dennis, thank you for coming on tonight. We're going to get into a lot of discussion going on in the city right now. Terry, we got a lot to talk about,
Yes, we
especially
do.
with budget time coming up.
Budget and
A
somehow
lot of budget shortfall discussions.
proposed bond. We want to discuss all of that and just see what Dennis can tell us about what's going on.
Well, I had the question, though, Dennis. I understand they had a cricket problem at the city council meeting the other night. A couple of different times had crickets sounding off. So tell me what's going on.
Oh,
there.
yeah. A couple of different times we had crickets sounding off, i.e. lack of backbone, lack of action, no leadership.
Ooh.
City council was going back and forth with the budget issue, talking about, how the fact that we're continuing making cuts in our city to handle operational issues, staff not being able to get a raise, we're absorbing health insurance costs, just all the problems we have, the backlog of maintenance, everything going on. And the mayor was like, everybody's preaching to the choir here. Everybody knows there's a problem. So someone gives a solution. What direction are we going to give the city manager to handle this? And for about a minute and 30 seconds, that's what it seemed like, probably about 30, 45 seconds, no one said anything.
Complete silence.
Complete silence.
Crickets.
And it happened like more than once,
Crickets.
twice, because there's only two options, really. The option is to raise taxes to handle the operational issues, because you don't want to use a bond to fund your reoccurring costs, or to fund the bond to handle the backlog of maintenance issues to free up the money they were given to that stuff to handle some of the operational issues. But pretty much no one wanted to offer a tax increase. I think Councilmember Smalley, Croskery, and Marion Blackburn alluded to the fact that the staff raise need to happen. But the only way that can happen is with a tax increase. But none of them wanted to, give the motion to make that happen.
And so an employee increase in salaries cannot take place with the bond. It would take
No.
place in some other
Yeah.
way,
'Cause,
which
I
would
mean-
be finding the money somewhere.
Yeah, finding money somewhere, and I think they found a 1.5% increase by looking at operations and where they can shuffle money around and find it. So they found enough to do that, but to take it up to the 2.5% increase, which was the recommendation from the Joint Pay and Benefits Committee with GUC, because whatever the city does, GUC has to do.
Okay.
They would definitely have to raise taxes to find that money.
Well, it's an unfortunate thing, and Tony Cannon is the only one who can really speak about this, and he's head of Greenville Utilities. But Greenville Utilities is a pretty strong operation, probably a pretty profitable operation. One thing I want to get into when we start getting into budgets is how much money actually gets transferred from that profitable GUC account
Right.
into the city's operating budget to help cover a shortfall of operating revenue for the city. And do you know anything about that?
Well, it's interesting because, from my understanding, GUC wasn't able to make the transfer this year because of some things they're trying to do on their end. But normally there is I think it's a standard amount based on some type of formula that they transfer every year to the city. So it's not, the city can't go to GUC and say, we have this hole, we want more money from you. Although they probably would like to, but they can't. But the ultimate problem is that they're bound by charter to follow the same HR policies as the city of Greenville. So the GUC has enough money to give their staff raises, but if Greenville doesn't do the same match, they cannot do it. And when you're dealing with an operation like GUC is, and the engineers and all that stuff like that, Tony really needs to keep up, as far as the market rate and be competitive. And it's kind of, hindering their operations at GUC to be able to be on the same policies as the city of Greenville. Because the city of Greenville, they have different revenue streams. GUC has it's just electricity, water. There's a service generated, where the city of Greenville is more taxes. So,
Well, I'm just suspicious, I guess, that's one of the things, Terry, I know you and I want to dig into is the amount of transfers, because in my opinion, I like speaking of my opinion on this, but that's a hidden tax increase. Can be
Right.
done through utility rate increases.
That's right.
And now I do understand that the recent water sewer, none of that money actually does go to the city of Greenville in operations, but
Those increases,
there are
you
other things, whether fees or whatnot, that may, and we're going to get into the whole fee structure of our city too, but people don't really realize fees and permit fees and little hidden things. You don't think about it, but every one of those is a tax increase.
well, I mean, that's
exactly
one thing
right.
the city council already agreed to, was looking at some fee structure increases. So that's already going to happen. So
Don't think
Which is a
for the
tax.
public.
there are
It is
some
a tax.
tax
It is a tax,
increases.
and
So-
don't think for the public that you're not paying it. You
Yeah.
are paying it.
So it'll be passed down to you, no matter whatever that category is you're purchasing in. That tax increase for fees will be passed down.
So ultimately, the city voted to give the staff direction to do the bond, and the size of that package is unknown. The level of it is unknown. What's it really going to be included in it is unknown, because from the staff's perspective, it was given to them that night. They had some I guess some pre-prepared things to put together what it could be, and it was the backlog of maintenance. I think we're up to about $15 million of facility and parks and recs maintenance that needs to be taken care of. We talk about, Marion Blackburn had a successful motion that passed that added new parks on there.
Now, was the Parks and Recreation repair budget part of the initial bond discussion, or because it makes it sound like that was added in as a motion from Mrs. Blackburn?
Yeah,
Or was it originally in there to begin with?
the purpose of the original intent of the bond was to handle those infrastructure issues, which would include the backlog and maintenance of some of the facilities.
Is that also stormwater,
The stormwater, sidewalks, street
road
maintenance,
Road
all that
maintenance.
stuff.
16 miles
Yeah, all
of-
that stuff like that. Councilmember Blackburn was adamant that new stuff had to be added. So new parks need to be added in the bond, and that passed. I mean, and anyone that follows council lately, it's probably because of her promotion of the East Side Park, which I think will be a huge blunder in the city. It's giving Simpson what we gave Winterville with
Well,
Boyd
the
Lee
East Side Park is convenient to her home.
Yeah, I mean, it's a $13 million park on the outskirts of the city that we just don't need at this time. So new
in-
parks will be looked at as a part of any package that the city brings in there.
Well, I want to say is that Greenville, if you are concerned about whether your taxes are going to be increased, and I'm not, we talked about this in the election. We are all advocates of parks.
Right.
But I would rather have a few really good parks than a lot of really bad parks. And when we're facing a time where a budget shortfall, and one of the things that Councilman Mercer wrote in his email to the public was we spent down $7 million of our rainy day fund balance. Why are we adding parks to this? Why are we putting more burden on the city when we can't even take care of what we have? We're having to take a bond out to take care of what we have. So now we're going to say, well, let's take this bond that's supposed to be repairs and let's add a few more parks to it. I mean, to me, parks are great. They're wonderful. But we need jobs. We need things that those are the things that are going to bring people to Greenville. The parks are a benefit to the residents.
That's right.
They're not the reason people move to the city. What do you have to say about that?
Well, first of all, his ideal about the spending down the rainy day fund is this complete fallacy that he's been saying since for the last 2 years for the election. Listen, the reason why we're in this backlog maintenance situation is because of the fact that Councilmember Mercer used to brag so much about that 27% fund balance. I mean, you create a budget that says you're only supposed to have 14%, but you're constantly banking money, and your roads are falling apart, your facilities are falling apart, everything's falling apart. So everything access we had over our budget amount of 14%, we said we got some stuff falling apart, and we took that money and we spent towards it. So we didn't spend down our rainy day fund. We just had too much rainy day fund.
Right.
So, and we used that. But, I mean, that's the problem what it is right now. We have a problem in the city council. I mean, the city of Greenville. We have a backlog of maintenance. We do have some positions that have been frozen for a while, but we need a city council that's going to exercise leadership. And they keep on kicking the can down the road over and over again, and nothing's going to happen. So say what you're going to mean and stand on it. If you think we need this stuff, call for a tax increase and stand on it. But don't be scared and worry about the political ramifications and you keeping your seat, because nothing's going to get better in this city.
So in the maintenance of that bond, does that include current parks? Because there was a rather long list of things that needed to be repaired or replaced in our Parks and Rec as part of that budget. Would that cover, would that operational maintenance you said cover the, facilities, that need to be done?
Yeah, current park needs. And the plan, the city council, the city staff gave them, I think, a little template plan of some examples of what it could be used for. And they were taking this money, they're stretching out so far.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about the $13 million plan for town commons, they were giving $1 million to it. Why give $1 million to that, $1 million to that, $1 million, instead of actually completing some things.
Right.
And one thing I think we all should be concerned with too, a lot of those numbers they're using, Terry, those was numbers that we had on redevelopment commission when we was there.
Yes.
So we're talking about the West Greenville, the streetscape plan. I mean, that's the same numbers they gave us when that plan was developed. We're going to end up with another situation like we did with the parking deck. The numbers need to be refined here too. So.
Right.
It's a bad situation.
So how will the amount of the bond numbers be determined? Who determines it, and how will they determine it?
The council ultimately votes on it. Councilmember Mercer was adamant about citizens coming up with what's going to be in the bond and how much the bond's going to be. But and that's fine and good. But citizens don't understand the ramifications of that stuff that actually needs to be done. You're going to end up with a bond package that is all new stuff, while your bad stuff is still falling apart. That's why I said leadership has to be exercised from the council.
Exactly.
But ultimately, the package is going to come from the city council. I will have to agree, Councilmember Mercer made a good point. When you do a bond, it's something that comes around at once every 10 years. So if you're going to do one, make sure it's big enough and it's meaningful enough.
To get something done with it.
But I think the decision or discussion needs to be, what is it going to be included? Is it for new stuff or is it not?
Well, as of right now, they gave staff the direction to have new stuff and old stuff.
Just new as in regards to parks and recreation.
Just new in regards to parks and recreation, period.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, there's opportunities, the wonderful river study, if you're going to create a bond, there's opportunities with that. There's opportunities in economic development. We talk about that we don't have any product to bring companies here, as in shell spaces and stuff like that.
Right.
None of those things were even mentioned or suggested by the city council.
So there's no economic development discussion in this discussion of a bond, but I think the other thing to get into is the time. Bond discussions go on forever. I'm on the board of trustees for Pitt Community College. We just did the bond that passed last November. That was at least a year discussion, I feel like, in the public to try to raise that money.
Well, the city manager would be quite impressed as you said it, because the mayor claimed y'all did it in 4 months at the city council meeting. And that's the big thing. The staff was concerned that, was this enough time to float a bond? And you got to realize it's only about 6 months. So it's putting the entire package together, getting the legislative approval, putting a promotion package together, getting stakeholders together. It's going to be a very, very tight schedule. And it's really because the city council wants to do it now because they don't want to run on it in 2 years when it's election time.
Well, I know, and plus it's got to get on a ballot. So you really don't have 6 months, because they print those ballots
you're right.
ahead. So at least take 30 days off of that. So you might have 5 months, maybe. So it has to be developed locally, reviewed by, say, Dave Hollick or whatever committee locally within our departments would review it, and then it goes to legislature for approval. And that's the only way it's allowed on the ballot. Am I right about that? Because this is new. This is something new to me, and I'm sure a lot of our public doesn't understand how that works either. So there really isn't a lot of time for public input.
Oh, no.
And I think that's my fear, too. I mean, if we're going to do a bond, which, I mean, I would be in support of if it encompassed everything. It cannot be just part. I mean, we get the deferred maintenance. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. But the whole discussion of just adding parks and recreation, Dennis, I'm gonna go with what you just said. There needs to be economic development focus on this. You know, if it's building shell buildings, the city can do that to attract industry and having the incentives. It's not just financial incentives, but sometimes it is those physical structures that people say, yes, I've got a 100,000 square foot building. We can put you in here right now. If we don't have that, and that's one of the struggles I know when I've dealt with Carl Reese in the past, of him trying to bring people to the city, he has nowhere to put them. So he's calling everyone in his black book to say, do you have this? Do you have this? And if we don't, he has, unless they're willing to wait, in many cases they're not. And this is my business. This is what I do every day. If they're not willing to wait, they're going to the next city who has it.
They can't wait. Sometimes they can't wait because every day they wait, it costs them money too.
And this is all no-brainers. We have an economic development plan, a strategic analysis that we're giving us that says your biggest problem is you don't have any product. If someone comes here, you don't have a space to offer them. We know that. So how can we say we're focusing on attracting jobs when our biggest problem we're not attacking right now? But this focus city council, I say it over and over again, it's always been their clues about economic development. It's not on their radar screen. We're focusing on things that matter, but they're not the most important things. And it's a shame. I mean, I think on Thursday they're talking about the Tar River neighborhood again. You know, we just got three unrelated studies. They're talking about that all over again. Weren't we done with that?
Well,
yeah, that's right.
I've heard discussion on the whole four unrelated rules. They're going to make a presentation to take it citywide.
Well, that's
wasn't
what I heard as well.
Their fear that what we were going to do?
That's what I didn't understand. We're talking about the foreign related in just this small area, and they turned it down and took it back, and now they want to open it up to the whole city. Doesn't make any sense.
Oh, there's something behind it. There's something behind it. They'll make it so restricted nobody can get it.
Well, one thing I will mention, Gary Fenton with Parks and Rec will be our guest next week, so maybe he can clear up some questions we have about the Parks and Rec, because both of my grandsons are playing baseball, and I've been in some of our facilities and when they were playing basketball, and some of them are in bad shape. The Guy Smith, the stadium itself is in great shape, but we were in the Jackie Robinson League, we're playing in Little League, and it's a mess. It's rotten wood, it's no shingles, it's standing water under the bleachers. You had to jump into the bleachers to find a seat. It's in really bad shape. We've got a lot of things that need to be taken care of. So maybe he can shed some light on what he feels about the current needs of the facilities existing and what's down the pike coming up.
I think since we're definitely in the discussion on city money, again, going back to Calvin's email, said that we have spent down $7 million. Dennis, you were very involved in the budget process before. Where are we at on the city with our fund balance, with finances? Where are we at? Give us a real
and we're
picture.
still above the 14%. I mean, and we, like I said, the state has a policy that all city governments, all municipal governments have to have 8% fund balance. The city of Greenville set a policy to have a 14% fund balance.
So we're still double the requirement.
We're over our 14% slightly. So we're never, until we spend below that 14%, Calvin needs to go somewhere with his newsletter.
What has been part of the reasons that we have spent it down? I mean, if he's saying we're done $7 million,
we spend it on the roads. We had that road problem.
$5 million you guys spent on that?
$5 million on roads. The city
has it actually been spent?
It has not been spent yet. They still have not.
So it's earmarked, but still sitting in there.
Still sitting there. Some of it has been spent. I think a small amount has been spent, but not all of it.
So if you got potholes in your city maintained neighborhood,
spend the money. I mean, government. That's the problem with government. It just moves so slow. Yeah. And then we upgraded the city software. They had a 20-year-old software system.
It needed to be done.
This software is going to allow our different departments, our police department, code enforcement, finance, all these departments to be linked together. So hopefully to free up some more efficiencies and make more room for more money. So we spent the stuff on the stuff that he, as a city council member, all his many years has been ignoring. He's bragging about how much money you got in the bank. Councilman Joyner used to always say, the city is not supposed to be a bank. We're supposed to provide services.
Right.
We collect money for people to provide services. And if we collected more money than we need, we should give the money back to the taxpayers. So if you collecting more than your 14%, you give the money back to the taxpayer. You cut taxes. But instead, we had deferred maintenance issues. We started spending that money on that. So I don't know what Calvin is talking about, and half the time I don't think he knows what he's talking about.
Well, it just really worries me, and maybe I'm just not looking at it the right way, but it worries me that we're thinking about passing a bond of an undetermined amount at this point, but we need to give raises, but we can find that 1.5 in the budget, but we can't do some of the maintenance we need to do. It's just all a little bit real confusing to me as to about getting the bond. I'm not objecting to it if it's for the right things, as Michael had alluded to a little bit earlier. But it just looks like to me, if we're in this type of shape, I'm not objecting to our employees having raises. But at what point do you give a raise every year when we're turning around and having to borrow the money, basically, for just a regular upkeep maintenance?
That's an excellent point. That's
I
a
mean,
very good point.
I don't understand exactly what's happening there.
Yeah, if you can't take care of your operations, you can't give a raise. I mean, that's the
Right.
way it works in normal business.
Well, we know city is not normal business. I know
Yeah,
we
that's
do need to
right.
take a quick commercial break. We'll come
good.
back, wrap it up with Dennis Mitchell. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Welcome back to our show. I'm Terry Williams.
Michael Overton.
Dennis Mitchell.
Helping us out tonight. We've been discussing the city budget and the proposed bond that the city council talked about on Monday night. They'll be probably discussing that a little bit more Thursday night. We'll certainly be following that because on the agenda it does say presentation of a proposed fiscal year budget for 2015 and 2016. But there's also a place on here on the agenda, maybe you can enlighten us, Dennis, how they worded this. I thought was very interesting because it's sort of hard to know exactly what they're going to do. Discussion of requirements and appropriate circumstances for increased rental occupancy.
Sound like they're going to have a discussion on what reasons will create situations why they will allow for unrelated people living in a house. And then the next item, they will probably look at how they can actually pass those reasons. So, I mean, I'm sitting over here laughing because the whole scare tactic during the election is that they're doing 3 unrelated because they're going to take it citywide. And now you have one of them, Councilman Rick Croskery, presenting the plan to start the conversations on taking 3 unrelated citywide. I mean, we don't want it in my neighborhood.
Right.
We don't have a renter's
Well,
neighborhood.
I think part of the argument I've heard, and I've talked to Rick about it, and everyone knows that I have respect for him, and we ran
Sure.
a great race together. But he doesn't feel, in my discussion with him, that any portion of the city should get special treatment, and that's his thought. I mean, that's his
Right.
feeling. My feeling in that though is looking just specifically at that UNRI neighborhood, which is the area around the university, is that it is different. It's 85% renter occupied.
That's
the rest of the
right.
city is 55 to 60% renter occupied, or 65, whatever the number is, but it's significantly less. So it is different, and I mean, I just feel like it should be treated different. We already know we got to put extra code enforcement officers in that area, and extra policemen in certain times of the day or evenings or weekends, but there is a difference there.
Well, I'm not sure I understand why they thought that the 3 to 4 or 4 unrelated was bad for that area. Now they want to talk about it, so they took it back. So now they want to talk about it for the entire town. That doesn't make sense at all. It's not at all why
Oh, it won't be that
they
easy, though.
said they took it away from the university area in the beginning.
Well, Terry, nothing this city council has really done has made a lot of sense. So I think we're just going to continue on that tradition, and hopefully that it clicked that we need to get back to talking about economic development and get the
Exactly.
city moving in the right direction.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. This discussion takes place about this 3 or 4 unrelated, whatever they're going to call it. Let's get it done and get it over with and move on because
It was supposed to be done last
it was
month.
supposed to be done, and that's exactly right. So, because we have said earlier today about everything we've talked about, the city budget, the bond, the other needs that we have, and that's where our focus needs to be, and really not on this issue over and over and over. So I don't understand. Maybe it's because they feel like they're competent enough to discuss the 3 or 4 unrelated, and where's the competency to discuss the budget? And that's what I'd like to see on the council. I'd like to see them talking about the budget and all the areas that it's going to have to cover and what we're going to do to fix all our problems.
I just say when we started about the budget in our city council, we had 13 meetings. We changed the budget process because we stopped this normal process. The city staff presenting to you a preview, then presenting it to you, and then you voting on it at the third meeting. We stopped that. We had 13 meetings where we really got into the details of the budget. We found efficiencies. We created Office of Economic Development, lighting and security. We did a lot of stuff that we dug into the budget. This city council is not doing that, and look where we're faced with.
I think that's obvious because I've attended almost all the meetings or either watched them on television, and I feel like that sometimes the subjects that they're bringing up of utmost importance, that they act like it's almost the first time they've seen it, the first time they've discussed it. And you mentioned that Monday night, the city manager or the staff wasn't aware of that the bond, was that what you were saying? They weren't aware the bond was going to be actually brought up like it was. So how can they be prepared for those meetings?
I mean, exactly. I mean, and they knew, the mayor kind of told them and said, y'all knew that we had this issue coming up.
Right.
So someone should have had a solution or someone should be ready to present something. And Calvin said they should have presented at the planning meeting. But, I mean, you're neither here nor there now. You have a budget that needs to be handled. You have very serious issues that need to be taken care of. Someone needs to stand up and exercise leadership. I mean. Well,
fast-tracking that bond issue, I feel, will be a complete disaster. It will not. It'll probably be more expensive than we need.
Right.
And it won't cover anywhere near what we need it to cover.
Well, I don't know how, if it normally takes at least 9 months to cover a bond issue, how you think you can squeeze it into 4 months and it be effective. And it worries me that they're more concerned about it not being on the ballot the next election than getting the problems fixed.
Absolutely. I mean, own it. I mean, we need leaders in this city that are going to make the right decisions without worrying about the repercussions of them having a seat or not.
Exactly.
That's the only way we're going to move forward. Someone that's willing to sacrifice their political career as a city council person to do the right thing so history will judge what they did as great, as opposed to taking something that's just going to keep them in their seat for the next 2 years.
Well, I know we're wrapping our show up. Again, we need to thank the Overton Group and Greenville Toyota as being part of our sponsor. We are going to have Parks and Rec on next week. If you got any comments or questions, please make sure you email them to greenvillegrit@gmail.com.
I want to thank Dennis
for
keeping us. Dennis has
on.
a lot of background knowledge on all of these issues, and we really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, and we will see you next week.